I stared at the account balance, the number so small it seemed like a typo. 846.32. Just yesterday, our joint investment portfolio had shown 327,458.19s. My fingertips went numb as I refreshed the screen again. The pathetic sum remained unchanged, mocking me from my laptop screen. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I took a steadying breath and reached for my phone, scrolling to find Carter's number. My husband of 11 years. The man who'd sworn to love and protect me. The man who had apparently just emptied our life savings without a word. The call went straight to voicemail. Again. This is Carter Merrick. Leave a message. His voice sounded so normal, so calm. I ended the call without speaking. What could I possibly say that would convey the magnitude of what I was feeling? The betrayal cut deeper than mere money, though the financial impact was devastating enough. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse apartment, Manhattan sparkled in the early evening light. The view had cost us, well, me apparently, a small fortune. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was surrounded by luxury I could no longer afford. I opened my email and found the automated notification from our investment firm. Confirmation of portfolio liquidation. Timestamp, 2:18 p.m. Just after Carter had kissed me goodbye, claiming he had an important client meeting that might run late. "Don't wait up, Elise," he'd said, straightening his Hermes tie, the one I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. "Macklin wants to discuss the Singapore acquisition. Could be an all-nighter." I'd smiled and squeezed his hand, completely oblivious to what he was planning. "Good luck. Text me when you're heading home." That was 7 hours ago. No texts, no calls. Just the silent disappearance of our financial future. A knock at the door startled me from my spiraling thoughts. My heart leapt. Carter returning to explain this catastrophic misunderstanding? But when I peered through the peephole, I saw a professionally dressed woman I didn't recognize, holding a leather portfolio. "Mrs. Merrick?" she asked when I opened the door. "I'm Claire Donovan from Pearson & Associates. I have some documents for you." "Documents?" My voice sounded distant, hollow. She nodded, her expression professionally neutral. "May I come in?" I stepped aside mechanically, leading her to our marble-topped kitchen island. The room still smelled faintly of the morning's coffee, Carter's special Ethiopian blend that cost $42 per pound. Claire placed her portfolio on the counter and extracted a thick envelope. "I've been instructed to deliver these divorce papers to you personally and to confirm receipt." The words hit me like physical blows. Divorce papers. Today. The same day our investment account had been drained. "There must be some mistake," I whispered, not reaching for the envelope. Claire's professional demeanor softened slightly. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Merrick, there's no mistake. Your husband filed the petition this afternoon." This afternoon. While I'd been at my weekly lunch with my mother, blissfully chatting about the charity gala we were planning, Carter had been dismantling our life. "And the money?" I asked, my voice strengthening with sudden clarity. "Did he mention anything about liquidating our investments?" Claire's expression revealed nothing. "I'm just the courier, Mrs. Merrick. I suggest you review the documents and contact your attorney." She slid the envelope toward me. "Please sign here to confirm receipt." I signed the form she presented, my signature barely resembling the careful loops I normally created. My hand was trembling too badly to maintain control. After Claire left, I stood in the silent apartment, divorce papers in hand, trying to make sense of what had happened. 11 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that. Nearly a decade and a half of my life, and Carter had ended it with the clinical efficiency of a surgical strike. I sank onto one of our imported Italian bar stools, the cold leather offering no comfort. The envelope felt impossibly heavy. Opening it would make this real, and part of me wanted to cling to ignorance for a few moments longer. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Naomi. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. How was lunch with your mom? Still on for drinks Friday? The normalcy of the message was jarring. How could ordinary life continue when mine had just imploded? I set the phone down without responding. Naomi would learn soon enough that our standing Friday cocktails would be indefinitely postponed. I couldn't afford $22 martinis anymore. With trembling fingers, I finally opened the envelope. Legal jargon swam before my eyes, but certain phrases stood out with horrible clarity. Irreconcilable differences. Equitable distribution. Separate property. I flipped through the pages, scanning for anything related to our finances. And there it was, in black and white. Carter was claiming the investment account as his separate property, asserting that all funds had originated from his inheritance and earnings prior to our marriage. A complete lie. My blood turned to ice as I recognized the strategy. If I couldn't prove my contributions to that account, if I couldn't trace my deposits over 11 years of marriage, he might actually succeed. And I knew with sudden certainty that he'd been planning this for months, possibly years. I thought of all the times he'd insisted on handling our finances, claiming his MBA made him better equipped. How he'd gently discouraged me from keeping my own separate accounts, assuring me that what's mine is yours. How he'd convinced me to deposit my entire inheritance from my grandmother into our joint investment account 3 years ago, promising we'd use it someday for our dream home in the Hamptons, $200,000. My inheritance now vanished along with the rest. I reached for my phone with sudden resolve and dialed my cousin Julian. He'd been a corporate attorney for 15 years and would know exactly what I should do. "Jules," I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need your help. Carter's emptied our accounts and filed for divorce." Julian's usual jovial tone disappeared instantly. "Where are you?" "At home." "He's not here. Stay there. Don't touch anything. Don't sign anything. I'm sending Margot to you right now." Margot Chen, Julian's colleague and one of the most feared divorce attorneys in Manhattan. The fact that Julian immediately suggested her told me everything about the severity of my situation. "Thanks," I said, the single word inadequate for my gratitude. "Jewel, he took everything. Over $300,000. Julian's silence spoke volumes. Then, documented transfers? "I have the notification of liquidation from this afternoon." "Good, that's a start. Margot will be there in 30 minutes. She'll know what to do." After hanging up, I moved through the apartment like a sleepwalker, suddenly seeing our shared space with new eyes. The furniture, the art, the carefully curated possessions that had seemed like manifestations of our success now looked like potential assets to be divided. Or worse, items Carter might try to claim entirely. I wandered into our home office and stood before the row of filing cabinets. Carter had always handled the paperwork, insisting on maintaining meticulous records. I'd found it endearing, a quirk of his organized nature. Now I wondered what secrets those files held. The cabinet drawers were locked. In 14 years together, I'd never known Carter to lock them. Another red flag I'd missed. I yanked on the handles futilely, frustration building. What else was he hiding? My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. "Elise Merrick?" A woman's crisp voice came through. "Yes?" "This is Margot Chen. I'm in your lobby. The doorman needs your approval to send me up." I called down to the front desk, and minutes later, Margot stood in my entryway, a compact, elegant woman in her 50s, radiating competence and controlled fury. She carried a sleek briefcase and wore a pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Julian briefed me," she said, dispensing with pleasantries. "Let's sit down and assess the situation." Her eyes swept the apartment, cataloging everything with professional precision. We settled in the living room, and I recounted everything that had happened, showing her the investment account notification and the divorce papers. Margot listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her tablet. "When did you last speak with your husband?" she finally asked. "This morning before he left for work." "Everything seemed normal. And your finances? Joint accounts? Separate accounts?" I explained our financial setup. Joint checking, joint savings, joint investment portfolio, joint credit cards, all tied to the same banking institution. All accessible by either of us. None of your own? Margot's tone was neutral, but I felt the implied criticism. I have a small checking account for personal expenses, I admitted. But most of everything went into our joint accounts. Carter said it was more efficient for tax purposes. Margot nodded, her expression revealing nothing. And your employment status? I left my position at Barrett Design 4 years ago at Carter's suggestion. I've been managing our household and focusing on charity work since then. The words sounded hollow now, the arrangement suddenly revealing itself as the vulnerability it was. Income before that? I was a senior interior designer. My salary was around $95,000 when I left. Margot made another note. What about family support? Resources you can access immediately? I thought about my mother, living comfortably but not extravagantly on my late father's life insurance. My brother in Seattle, struggling with his own recent divorce. Limited, I admitted. I have about $12,000 in my personal account. That's it. And the apartment? We bought it 6 years ago. Both names on the deed, mortgage, paid off last year. I remembered the celebration dinner, the champagne. Carter's toast to our financial independence. The memory curdled now. Margot set down her tablet and looked me directly in the eyes. Elise, I won't sugarcoat this. Your husband has clearly been planning this for some time. The liquidation of assets immediately before filing suggests he's attempting to hide money and manipulate the financial landscape before proceedings begin. I nodded. My suspicions confirmed. The good news, she continued, is that his actions are transparent and likely illegal. No judge will look favorably on emptying accounts immediately before filing. The bad news is that recovering those funds may be challenging depending on where he's transferred them. What do we do first? I asked, clinging to her confident competence like a lifeline. We need to act quickly. Tonight. I'll file emergency motions first thing in the morning to freeze any remaining assets and compel disclosure. But tonight, we need to secure evidence and protect what's left. She opened her briefcase and extracted a small device. This is an encrypted drive. We're going to collect every financial record we can find. Every statement, every receipt, every tax return. Anything that proves your contributions to that investment account, especially documentation of your inheritance. I thought of the locked filing cabinets and frowned. Carter kept most of our records in locked cabinets in the office. A slight smile curved Margot's lips. Let's take a look at those cabinets. In the office, Margot examined the locks on the filing cabinets. Standard key locks. No problem. She reached into her immaculate hair and extracted a bobby pin, then bent it with practiced ease. 30 seconds later, the first cabinet drawer slid open. Useful skill, I said, impressed despite my emotional turmoil. Law school pays for itself in unexpected ways, she replied dryly. Let's see what your husband has been hiding. Together we began methodically searching through the files. Margot showed me what to look for. Account statements, tax returns, property records, anything with financial information. We found years of meticulous records, all organized with Carter's characteristic precision. As we worked, a pattern emerged. For the past 2 years, Carter had been gradually moving funds between accounts, small amounts that wouldn't trigger attention. Most troublingly, we found documentation of an account I'd never heard of, in the name of a corporation I didn't recognize, Merrick Holdings, LLC. When was this established? I asked, holding up the incorporation papers. Margot checked the date. 3 years ago. She thumbed through the document. Sole owner listed as Carter Merrick, 3 years ago. Right around the time he'd suggested I leave my job to focus on more fulfilling pursuits. Right around the time he'd become more insistent about handling all our finances. Is this legal? I asked, my voice tight. Establishing an LLC? Perfectly legal. Using it to hide marital assets from a spouse? Not so much. Margot continued scanning documents. Ah, here we go. She held up a statement showing a transfer of $75,000 from our joint account to Merrick Holdings, dated 18 months ago. Do you recall authorizing this transfer? I shook my head. the betrayal deepening with each new revelation. He told me he was moving some funds into a higher-yield investment opportunity. I trusted him. Margot's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes held understanding. Many of my clients have similar stories, Elise. Financial infidelity often precedes the other kind. The other kind. Her words triggered a thought I'd been subconsciously avoiding. If Carter had been planning a divorce for years, had there been someone else too? The possibility landed like a physical blow. We need to check his email, I said suddenly. His computer, Margot nodded. Computer, phone records, credit card statements? All of it. She gestured to the sleek desktop in the corner. Is that his? We both use it, but yes, primarily. I sat down at the computer and woke it from sleep mode. The password prompt appeared, and I typed in Carter's standard password, our anniversary date followed by my initials. Access denied. He changed the password, I said, the small betrayal somehow stinging despite the larger ones. Margot looked thoughtful. Any ideas what it might be now? I tried several variations of passwords Carter had used over the years. Nothing worked. After the third failed attempt, a security message appeared. Account temporarily locked for security purposes. Please try again in 30 minutes. Let's come back to this, Margot suggested. We have plenty of physical evidence to work with for now. We continued our methodical search, copying everything of relevance to Margot's encrypted drive. By midnight, we had amassed significant documentation, evidence of Carter's systematic movement of funds, records showing my inheritance being deposited into our joint account, tax returns clearly reflecting my income contributions before I'd left my job. This is a good start, Margot said, reviewing our findings. Tomorrow we'll get court orders to freeze remaining assets and compel full financial disclosure. We'll also subpoena banking records to trace the funds he liquidated today. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion and emotional turmoil taking their toll. What about tonight? What if he comes back? Margot's expression hardened slightly. Based on his actions, I think that's unlikely. But if he does return, do not engage in any discussions about finances or the divorce. Record any conversation if you legally can. Do not agree to anything, sign anything, or make any commitments. She reached into her briefcase and handed me a card. My direct line. Call anytime, day or night, if he returns or contacts you. After Margot left, the apartment felt cavernous and alien. I wandered from room to room, seeing everything through new eyes. The expensive furnishings I'd selected with such care now seemed like props in an elaborate deception. Had any of it been real? Had Carter ever truly loved me? Or had I just been a convenient accessory in his carefully constructed life? I couldn't face our bedroom, couldn't bear to see the king-sized bed where we'd slept side by side for years while he plotted his escape. Instead, I curled up on the living room sofa, wrapped in a cashmere throw, my phone clutched in my hand. Sleep eluded me as my mind raced through the past 14 years, searching for signs I'd missed. There had been subtle changes in recent months. Carter working later, becoming more protective of his phone, suggesting separate vacations due to conflicting schedules. Classic signs of infidelity, perhaps, but I'd attributed them to work stress and midlife restlessness. Around 3 a.m, my phone lit up with a text message. Carter. Elise, I know you've received the papers by now. I'm sorry it had to be this way. I'll have my lawyer contact yours to discuss arrangements. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. The audacity of his message ignited a fury I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. Make this difficult? After he'd stolen our life savings? After he'd systematically planned this betrayal for years? I typed and deleted a dozen responses, each more scathing than the last. Finally, remembering Margot's advice, I simply took a screenshot of the message and sent no reply. Any response could potentially be used against me later. Instead, I forwarded the screenshot to Margot with a brief message. Carter made contact, not responding as advised. Her reply came moments later, despite the hour. Wise decision. Get some rest. Tomorrow we fight back. I set down the phone and stared out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Carter was starting his new life with our money, probably congratulating himself on his clean escape. He thought he'd left me powerless, penniless, and alone. He had severely underestimated me. Dawn found me still awake, watching the sun rise over the city. I'd spent the hours marshaling my resources, making mental inventories of allies and assets Carter might not know about. The designer in me had always appreciated how every element in a space served both function and aesthetic. Now I was designing something new, my survival and comeback. My phone buzzed with a text from Margot. Court opens at 9. Meeting at my office at 8. Bring the documentation we collected. 535 Madison Ave, 30th floor. I showered and dressed with deliberate care, choosing a structured navy sheath dress and low heels. Professional, understated wealth rather than flashy affluence. My armor for the battle ahead. The woman who stared back from the mirror looked pale but determined, with a fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. As I gathered the files we'd collected, my phone rang. My mother. Elise, darling. I've been trying to reach you since yesterday evening. Is everything all right? I hesitated, not ready to unleash the torrent of questions and concerns that would follow the truth. Not exactly, Mom. I'm dealing with a situation. Can I call you this afternoon? Her immediate silence told me she'd detected the gravity in my voice. Of course. But you know you can tell me anything, right? I know, Mom, and I will. Just not right now. After we hung up, I called for a car, no longer concerned about the expense. The battle for my financial future and justice had begun, and I intended to use every resource at my disposal. Margot's law firm occupied 3 floors of a sleek Madison Avenue tower. The reception area screamed power and success, all glass, steel and rare wood with sweeping views of the city. I was escorted immediately to a conference room where Margot waited with 2 colleagues she introduced as her financial forensics team. We have a court appointment at 9:30, she said without preamble. Judge Harriman, we're requesting an emergency freeze on all remaining marital assets and an order compelling your husband to account for the liquidated investments. One of the financial experts, a razor-sharp woman named Denise, spread documents across the table. Based on what you provided last night, we've identified several potential destinations for the transferred funds. The most likely is this account in Grand Cayman, linked to Merrick Holdings LLC. I stared at the document showing wire transfer instructions. Can we get it back? That depends, Margot said carefully. Offshore accounts complicate matters, but they don't make them impossible, especially when we can prove fraudulent intent. And your husband was not subtle. We spent the next 40 minutes reviewing our strategy for court. Margot was ruthlessly efficient, preparing me for every possible scenario, every question the judge might ask. Remember, she said as we gathered our materials to leave, we want the judge to see you as the wronged party, which you are, but also as composed and reasonable. No matter what Carter or his attorney says, maintain your dignity. The documentation speaks for itself. The courthouse was imposing, a massive stone edifice designed to make ordinary citizens feel small. Inside, we were directed to a courtroom on the 3rd floor. As we approached the doors, Margot put a steadying hand on my arm. He's here, she said quietly. With counsel. I followed her gaze and saw Carter standing near the courtroom entrance, deep in conversation with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Carter looked immaculate as always, not a hair out of place, his custom suit perfectly tailored. As if sensing my presence, he looked up, his eyes meeting mine across the corridor. For a brief moment, I glimpsed something unexpected in his expression. Uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Then his lawyer murmured something, and Carter's face resumed its mask of confident detachment. Interesting, Margot murmured. What? I asked, not breaking eye contact with the man I'd loved for 14 years. He's with Gerald Patterson. Aggressive litigator, but not primarily a divorce attorney. Curious choice. She guided me toward the courtroom doors. Let's make him regret it. Inside, we took our places at one of the tables facing the bench. Carter and his attorney seated themselves at the other, maintaining a careful distance. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the empty judge's chair. though I could feel Carter's gaze repeatedly drifting toward me. Judge Harriman entered. A stern-looking woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes that seemed to assess everything in an instant. The bailiff called the court to order, and our emergency hearing began. Margot presented our case with surgical precision, laying out the timeline of Carter's actions and submitting evidence of the account liquidation. She emphasized my contributions to the investment account, particularly my inheritance, and characterized Carter's actions as a transparent attempt to hide marital assets on the eve of filing for divorce. When Patterson rose to respond, his strategy became immediately clear. Your Honor, my client acknowledges transferring funds from what was always his separate property account. Mrs. Merrick's name was added to the account merely as a convenience, but the funds originated entirely from Mr. Merrick's earnings and inheritance. I felt a surge of anger at the blatant lie, but kept my expression neutral, remembering Margot's coaching. Patterson continued. Furthermore, the timing of the transfer was related to a time-sensitive investment opportunity, not the divorce filing. The proximity of these events is purely coincidental. Judge Harriman's expression remained impassive, but her questions were pointed. Mr. Patterson, are we to understand that your client transferred over $300,000 out of a joint account on the same day he filed for divorce, and this was merely coincidental? Yes, Your Honor. The investment opportunity. And where exactly are these funds now? The judge interrupted. Patterson hesitated, just long enough for Margot to notice. They've been reinvested in a new opportunity through my client's business entity. Specifically? Judge Harriman pressed. I don't have those exact details at present, Your Honor. The judge's eyebrow rose slightly. I find that concerning, Mr. Patterson. She turned to Margot. Ms. Chen, you've requested an emergency freeze on remaining assets and a forensic accounting. Anything else? Yes, Your Honor, Margot replied. We also request an order requiring Mr. Merrick to return the liquidated funds to a court-supervised escrow account pending equitable distribution determinations. Patterson immediately objected. Your Honor, such an order would be premature and potentially damaging to my client's business interests. Judge Harriman studied both attorneys, then Carter, and finally me. Her gaze was penetrating, assessing. After a moment, she spoke. Here's my ruling. All remaining marital assets are frozen, effective immediately. Mr. Merrick is ordered to provide a complete accounting of all financial transactions for the past 36 months within 5 business days. The court appoints a forensic accountant. She named a respected financial investigator to trace the liquidated funds. She fixed Carter with a stern look. Mr. Merrick, this court takes a very dim view of parties who attempt to hide or dissipate marital assets prior to divorce proceedings. I am not yet ordering the return of the transferred funds, but be advised that if the forensic investigation indicates improper intent, I will not hesitate to do so, along with considering sanctions. She gavelled the hearing closed and stood. We will reconvene next week to review the forensic findings. As we left the courtroom, I felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. We'd won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. That went well, Margot said as we descended the courthouse steps. Harriman is known for her no-nonsense approach to asset concealment. Patterson looked uncomfortable. What happens now? I asked. Now we dig deeper. The forensic accountant will trace the money trail. Meanwhile, we'll continue our own investigation. Carter's business, his personal life, everything. She gave me a significant look, including whether there might be someone else. The possibility I'd been avoiding resurfaced. You think he's having an affair? In my experience, when someone goes to these lengths to hide assets and orchestrate a surprise divorce, there's often another person involved. Margot checked her watch. I have another court appearance in 30 minutes. Let's meet tomorrow morning to discuss next steps. As Margot hurried off to her waiting car, I stood on the courthouse steps, uncertain what to do next. The apartment no longer felt like home, yet I had nowhere else to go. I couldn't face questions from friends or family just yet, not until I had more answers. My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. We need to talk. Coffee at Riverside, our usual spot. 1 p.m. See Carter using a number I didn't recognize. Our usual spot. The small cafe near Riverside Park where we'd had countless weekend brunches over the years. Where he'd proposed 14 years ago. I stared at the message, torn between curiosity and caution. What could he possibly want to say now? Was this a trick? An attempt to manipulate me outside the protective framework of lawyers and judges? After several minutes of deliberation, I forwarded the message to Margot with a question. Should I meet him? Her response came quickly. Your call. If you go, public place only, record if legal, no agreements or signatures, tell him your lawyer advised against meeting but you're willing to listen. Might reveal useful info. I considered her advice. Part of me, the hurt, angry part, wanted to ignore Carter completely. But another part needed answers only he could provide. Not just about the money, but about us. Had anything been real? I texted back to Carter's new number. I'll be there. 30 minutes only. His reply was immediate. Thank you. 2 simple words that somehow made my chest tighten. I flagged down a taxi and gave the driver the cafe address. My mind racing with all the questions I wanted to ask, all the accusations I wanted to hurl. The taxi crawled through midday Manhattan traffic, giving me too much time to second-guess my decision. By the time we arrived at Riverside, my nerves were razor-sharp, my emotions a volatile mix of anger, grief, and determination. Carter was already there, seated at an outdoor table, our regular table, nursing what looked like black coffee. He stood when he saw me approaching, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. Elise, he said, his voice softer than I expected. Thank you for coming. I took the seat across from him, maintaining as much distance as the small table allowed. I have 28 minutes, I said, checking my watch pointedly. What do you want? He winced slightly at my tone, then signaled to the waiter. Still latte with an extra shot? He asked me. Nothing for me, I told the waiter, not wanting to accept even coffee from Carter. When we were alone again, Carter leaned forward. I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it, I interrupted. You stole our life savings and filed for divorce on the same day without a word of warning. After 14 years together, he had the grace to look uncomfortable. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Oh, how was it supposed to happen? Was there a more elegant way to destroy my life that you considered and rejected? Carter glanced around, lowering his voice. Elise, please. I didn't come here to fight. Why did you come, Carter? What could you possibly have to say to me outside of our lawyers? He took a deep breath. I wanted to explain. About the money. I waited, arms crossed. The investment account, he continued when I didn't speak. I needed those funds for a crucial opportunity. Time-sensitive. I was going to replace it. Stop. I held up a hand. I'm not interested in lies. We both know exactly why you took that money, and it had nothing to do with investments. Carter's facade slipped for just a moment, revealing a flicker of the calculation behind his pleasant expression. The court seemed quite interested in my investment plans, he said carefully. The court also seemed quite interested in why those plans coincided perfectly with your divorce filing, I countered, and why your attorney couldn't specify where the money went. He sipped his coffee, buying time. Look, Elise, this doesn't have to be contentious. We can work out a fair settlement without dragging everything through the courts. Fair? I nearly laughed. You emptied our accounts, lied about my inheritance, and tried to leave me with nothing. What exactly is your definition of fair? I'm willing to be generous. Generous with my money? This time I did laugh, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Let me be perfectly clear, Carter. I will get back every penny you took. Every penny that belonged to me. The courts will make sure of that. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. The courts will see that I built our fortune. My career, my connections, my inheritance, I interrupted. My career that I abandoned at your suggestion. My contributions that are thoroughly documented, as the judge will soon discover. We stared at each other across the table, 14 years of shared history distilled into this moment of adversarial clarity. There's something else, I said, watching his face carefully. "Who is she?" Carter's practiced composure slipped just for an instant. A slight widening of the eyes, a barely perceptible tension in his jaw. But it was enough. My suspicion crystallized into certainty. "How long?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Elise?" "How long?" He sighed, abandoning the pretense. 2 years, 2 years. Half the time I'd been out of the workforce, focusing on our life while he built a separate one. The betrayal was staggering in its completeness. "Who?" I demanded, needing to know everything now. Carter hesitated, then relented. "Vanessa Lin, from the Singapore office." The name hit me like a physical blow. Vanessa. The promising young executive Carter had personally recruited 3 years ago. The one he'd mentored so carefully, traveling to Singapore with increasing frequency. "She's 34, he added, as if her age somehow explained everything. 11 years younger than me. 18 years younger than Carter. "Of course," I stood abruptly. "This conversation is over." Carter reached for my wrist. "Elise, wait. We should discuss terms." I pulled free from his grasp. "I have nothing more to say to you except through my attorney. Enjoy your youth and the money while you can, Carter. Neither will last as long as you think." As I walked away, I heard him call after me, but I didn't turn. My 28 minutes were up, and I'd learned everything I needed to know. Back on the street, I texted Margot. "Meeting over." He admitted affair with colleague. Also claimed he would replace the money he took. Implied investment opportunity. Her response was immediate. "Excellent. Admission of affair helpful for negotiations. Replace the money, admission even better. Acknowledges wrongful taking. See you tomorrow, 9 a.m. I put away my phone and hailed another taxi. But instead of directing the driver to the apartment, I gave a different address. My old firm, Barrett Design. It was time to rebuild more than just my finances. It was time to reclaim my life. Barrett Design occupied 3 floors of a converted industrial building in Chelsea. The exposed brick walls, steel beams, and wall-to-wall windows had once felt like a second home to me. Now, as I pushed through the glass doors into the reception area, I felt like an intruder returning to a place I'd abandoned. The space had been redesigned since my departure. Sleeker, more minimalist, with a digital wall displaying a rotating gallery of the firm's latest projects. I didn't recognize the young woman at the reception desk. "I'm here to see Victoria Barrett," I said, trying to project more confidence than I felt. "Elise Merrick." "I don't have an appointment." The receptionist's brow furrowed slightly. "Ms. Barrett is in meetings all afternoon. Perhaps I could schedule something for later this week? Please tell her I'm here. Just for 5 minutes." I passed over my old business card, one I'd kept more from sentiment than utility. "I used to be a senior designer here." The young woman's expression changed subtly as she recognized the name. "Oh, Mrs. Merrick, I'll see if Ms. Barrett is available." I took a seat in the waiting area, studying the digital portfolio as it cycled through images. Several projects I recognized from my time at the firm, others completed after my departure. The work was still exceptional. Victoria Barrett accepted nothing less. Elise Merrick, as I live and breathe. I turned to find Victoria herself striding toward me, tall, angular, her signature silver bob perfect as always. At 62, she remained one of the most formidable figures in New York design, having built her firm from nothing after leaving a toxic partnership at another company 20 years ago. I stood, suddenly uncertain. Victoria and I had worked closely for 6 years, but our relationship had cooled when I left. She'd made no secret of her disappointment, viewing my departure as choosing domesticity over career ambition. "Victoria," I said, extending my hand. "Thank you for seeing me." She ignored my hand and pulled me into a brief, firm hug. 4 years and you show up unannounced. This must be important. Her shrewd eyes assessed me. "Let's talk in my office." I followed her through the studio, noting how many unfamiliar faces bent over drafting tables and computer screens. A few designers I knew looked up in surprise, offering quick waves or nods. Victoria's corner office was exactly as I remembered, Organized chaos. Walls covered with material samples, sketches, and inspiration images. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the Hudson River. "Sit," she commanded, settling behind her cluttered desk. "Now, what brings the perfect Mrs. Merrick back to the working world? Charity planning not fulfilling enough?" I winced at her pointed tone but recognized it as Victoria's way. Direct, unvarnished, never malicious but never gentle either. "Carter emptied our accounts and filed for divorce yesterday," I said, matching her directness. "He's been having an affair." "I need a job." Victoria's expression shifted from surprise to something fiercer. "That bastard," she muttered. "Then, how much did he take?" "Over 300,000. My inheritance included." She let out a low whistle. "And now you need income." "I need my career back," I corrected. "I made a mistake leaving Victoria. I know that now." She studied me for a long moment, then reached for her tablet. "Your portfolio still holds up. The Robinson project you led won 3 awards after you left." I hadn't known that. Carter had never mentioned it, though he must have seen the industry coverage. "What about the Pacific Heights renovation?" I asked. "Did the clients go with the cantilevered staircase?" A slight smile crossed Victoria's face. "They did. It graced the cover of Architectural Digest last year." She set down the tablet. "You've been out of the industry for 4 years, Elise. Things have changed." "I've kept up with trends," I said quickly. "And I've continued designing, even if only for friends and charity events. It's not the same as client work. Deadlines, budgets, contractors who think they know better than you do." I leaned forward. "I managed a $2.3 million renovation of the Children's Hospital Pediatric Wing last year, on time and under budget. The contractor was the mayor's brother-in-law who hadn't taken direction from a woman in his life." Victoria's eyebrow rose slightly. And now he recommends me to anyone who'll listen." She laughed, a short, approving sound. "Always did like your spine, Elise, even when you were wasting it on that husband of yours." I didn't rise to the bait. "I'm not asking for my old position back, Victoria. I know I have to earn my place again. But I need somewhere to start." Victoria was silent for a moment, fingers tapping thoughtfully on her desk. "The Westbrook project," she said finally. "New client, full renovation of a pre-war apartment on the Upper West Side. Alexander starts maternity leave next week. We need someone to take over." Hope surged through me. "What's the timeline?" "Tight. 6 months to completion. Design phase nearly done, but execution just beginning." "Budget?" $4 million, all in," I nodded, mentally calculating. It was a substantial project, exactly the kind of challenge I needed. "You'd be stepping into someone else's design," Victoria warned. "No major changes at this point." The clients approved Alexander's concept. "I understand. I'd done it before, seamlessly taking over projects when colleagues left or were reassigned." Victoria fixed me with her penetrating gaze. "You'd start at associate level, not senior. Prove yourself on this project. We'll talk about promotion." It was a demotion from my previous position, but I had expected nothing less. That's fair. Salary would be $85,000. Less than I'd made before, but more than enough to support myself while fighting for my financial future. "When can I start?" Victoria's lips curved into a slight smile. "Monday, 8 a.m. Alexander will brief you." She leaned back in her chair. "Now tell me what happened with Carter. Everything." I hesitated, then realized I needed an ally who understood the professional world I was re-entering. Someone who knew Carter and wouldn't be shocked by his betrayal. For the next 30 minutes, I laid out the whole sordid tale, the liquidated accounts, the secret LLC, the affair with Vanessa, the court hearing. Victoria listened without interrupting, her expression growing stormier by the minute. "Always thought he was too slick by half," she said when I finished. "Remember when he tried to negotiate your contract after you got that offer from Callahan Design?" I did remember. Carter had inserted himself into my salary negotiations, claiming his MBA gave him better insight into market value. "Victoria," I said hesitantly, "I need to ask a favor. If Carter or anyone calls asking about me," she waved dismissively, As far as I'm concerned, you've been in serious discussions with us for months. Had to wait for the right project to open up. She fixed me with a look. Never liked how he isolated you from your career, Elise. Never trusted a man who wanted his wife to be less than she could be. I swallowed hard against a sudden tightness in my throat. Thank you. Victoria stood, indicating our meeting was over. Don't thank me yet. The Westbrooks are demanding clients. Their last designer quit after Mrs. Westbrook reduced him to tears. Despite everything, I smiled. Victoria was giving me exactly what I needed. Not pity, but a challenge. A chance to prove myself. I'll see you Monday, I said, standing to leave. One more thing. Victoria opened a drawer and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the desk. Sophia Reyes, best divorce attorney in the city. Tell her I sent you. I glanced at the card, then back at Victoria. I already have a lawyer. Margot Chen. Victoria's eyebrow rose appreciatively. Even better. Margot's a shark. She came around the desk and walked me to the door. Carter won't know what hit him. As I left Barrett Design, I felt lighter than I had since discovering the emptied account. I had a job, a purpose, a path forward. Carter had tried to leave me with nothing, but he'd forgotten what I was capable of. My phone buzzed as I reached the street. Margot. Just heard from the forensic accountant, she said when I answered. He's found something interesting. How soon can you get to my office? 20 minutes, I replied, already hailing a taxi. Make it 15. The urgency in her voice sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. What did he find? Not over the phone. Hurry. The taxi ride to Margot's office felt interminable. My mind raced with possibilities. Had they already traced the money? Found evidence of more hidden accounts? When I arrived at her building, security waved me through immediately. Margot had called ahead. Upstairs, I was escorted directly to a conference room where Margot waited with a man I'd never seen before, and a woman in a tailored suit who exuded authority. Elise. This is David Levine, our forensic accountant, Margot introduced the man, then nodded to the woman. And this is Special Agent Rebecca Harlow with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. FBI. My knees weakened as I sank into a chair. What's happening? Agent Harlow's expression was professionally neutral. Mrs. Merrick, we believe your husband may be involved in financial crimes that go beyond hiding marital assets. We'd like to ask you some questions about his activities. I glanced at Margot, who nodded reassuringly. Tell them everything, Elise. You're not under investigation. Carter is. For the next 2 hours, I answered the agent's increasingly specific questions about Carter's work habits, business travel, home office setup, and financial discussions. I explained how he'd gradually taken over all our finances, discouraged me from maintaining separate accounts, and insisted on handling all tax and investment matters personally. Would you recognize the name Sebastian Chen? Agent Harlow asked, showing me a photograph of a young Asian man. I shook my head. I've never seen him before. He's a junior analyst at Macklin Investments in Singapore, she explained. Yesterday, immediately after liquidating your joint account, your husband transferred $250,000 to an account in Chen's name. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. But why? Who is he to Carter? That's what we're trying to determine, Harlow replied. Macklin Investments handles several accounts for Reynolds Technologies, where your husband is CFO. There appears to be a pattern of suspicious transfers dating back 3 years. 3 years. Around the time Carter had suggested I leave my job. Around the time he'd become more insistent about handling all our finances himself. What kind of financial crimes are we talking about? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Agent Harlow glanced at Margot before answering. Based on preliminary evidence, we're investigating possible wire fraud, money laundering, and corporate espionage. The liquidation of your investment account triggered automated alerts in our system due to the size and timing of the transfer. Corporate espionage? I echoed, my mind reeling. We believe your husband may have been selling proprietary trading algorithms from Reynolds Technologies to competitors through Macklin Investments, Harlow explained. The woman you identified as his mistress, Vanessa Lin, works for Macklin's Singapore office. She appears to be his primary contact there. I felt physically ill. Not only had Carter betrayed me personally, but he'd apparently been engaged in criminal activity that could send him to prison for years. And he'd used our joint accounts, including my inheritance, to facilitate these crimes. What happens now? I asked, looking to Margot. 2 parallel tracks, she replied. The divorce proceedings continue, with this new information strengthening our case for financial malfeasance. Simultaneously, the FBI continues its investigation into the larger criminal enterprise. Will I get my money back? The question seemed almost trivial given the magnitude of what we were discussing. But it was my financial future at stake. David Levine, the forensic accountant who had been silent throughout the FBI questioning, finally spoke. We've already identified several accounts that appear to contain proceeds from your husband's activities. If those funds are seized as part of a criminal case, you could potentially file a claim as an innocent spouse to recover your portion. However, Agent Harlow added, that process can take years, especially in complex cases involving international transactions. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. What should I do? For now, cooperate fully with the investigation, Margot advised. Meanwhile, we'll continue pursuing your divorce case aggressively. The evidence of Carter's misconduct significantly strengthens our position. Agent Harlow handed me her card. If you think of anything else that might be relevant, unusual visitors, business trips, phone calls, anything at all, please contact me directly. After the FBI agent departed, I remained with Margot and David, reviewing what we knew about Carter's financial maneuvers. The picture that emerged was methodical, calculated, and devastating. He's been planning this for years, I said, the realization sinking in. Not just the divorce, everything. Margot nodded grimly. Men like Carter don't improvise. They orchestrate. The good news is that their arrogance often leaves evidence. They believe they're too clever to be caught. What about the court hearing tomorrow? I asked. It goes forward as planned, Margot confirmed. Judge Harriman should know about the FBI investigation. But we'll focus primarily on the divorce aspects, the liquidated account, your inheritance, the marital assets. I left Margot's office with my head spinning, overwhelmed by the cascading revelations. The sunny afternoon felt incongruous with my inner turmoil. I decided to walk for a while, needing physical movement to process my thoughts. The shock was giving way to anger, a cold, clarifying rage unlike anything I'd experienced before. Carter hadn't just betrayed me as a husband. He'd potentially implicated me in criminal activity. He'd used my inheritance, money from my beloved grandmother, to facilitate his schemes. He'd systematically isolated me from my career and financial independence, creating the perfect environment for his manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Important. Please. See Carter. Using yet another number I didn't recognize. I contemplated ignoring it, then decided knowledge was power. I texted back, when and where? His response came quickly. Now. Our coffee shop on 73rd. Please come alone. Our coffee shop. The small, elegant cafe near the park where we'd spent countless Saturday mornings over the years. Where he'd proposed 14 years ago. I hesitated, then called Margot. Carter wants to meet, I explained. Says it's important. Absolutely not, she replied immediately. Not without counsel present. What if he reveals something useful about the money? About his schemes? Margot was silent for a moment. If you're determined to go, I can't stop you. But take precautions. Public place only. Record the conversation if legal in your state. Do not agree to anything, sign anything, or make commitments of any kind. I understand. And Elise? Remember who you're dealing with now. This isn't the man you married, or maybe he always was, and you're only now seeing it clearly. Her warning resonated as I headed to the cafe. The Carter I thought I knew wouldn't have stolen our savings, conducted an affair, or engaged in corporate espionage. Yet he had done all these things, methodically and without apparent remorse. Who was I really meeting? The cafe was quiet for a weekday afternoon. Carter sat at a corner table, staring into an untouched cup of coffee. He looked up as the bell above the door announced my arrival. For just an instant, naked relief crossed his face before his expression settled into something more guarded. "Elise," he said, standing as I approached. "Thank you for coming." I took the seat across from him, maintaining as much distance as the small table allowed. "Make it quick, Carter." "I have nothing to say to you." He glanced around the cafe, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. "They're investigating me. The FBI." "I know." His eyes widened slightly. "How?" "I met with them this afternoon. They had quite a few questions about your financial activities." Carter paled visibly. "What did you tell them?" "Everything I know, which isn't much, as you made sure of that." I held his gaze steadily. "Sebastian Chen, Vanessa Lin, Macklin Investments, corporate espionage. Ring any bells?" "Jesus," he whispered, running a hand through his normally perfect hair. "Elise, you have to understand." "Understand what?" I interrupted. "That you've been stealing from your company? That you used my inheritance for money laundering? That you planned to leave me penniless while you ran off with your mistress? Please, enlighten me." "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," he said, his voice strained. "None of it. How was it supposed to happen, Carter?" He looked down at his coffee. "I never meant to hurt you." "Spare me," I said coldly. "You've been planning this for years. The secret LLC, the gradual isolation from my career, the systematic draining of our accounts. This wasn't impulsive, it was calculated." "The business part, yes," he admitted. "But not the divorce, not initially." "So when did you decide to betray me in that way too?" "When Vanessa came along," he winced. "It's complicated." "I'm sure it is." I moved to stand. "If that's all—" "Wait," Carter said urgently, reaching for my hand. I pulled away before he could touch me. "I want to make a deal." "I'm not interested in your deals." "I can get your money back," he said quickly. "All of it. Your inheritance, your portion of our investments, everything." I paused, studying his face. "How?" "I have accounts they haven't found yet. Offshore, untraceable. I can transfer the funds to you today. Right now, if you agree to tell the FBI you knew nothing about my business activities." "I did know nothing about your business activities," I pointed out. "Yes, but—" He hesitated. "I need you to be adamant about that. No speculation, no suspicions, nothing that might suggest you had any idea what was happening." Understanding dawned. "You want me to be your alibi?" "Not an alibi exactly, just not a witness against me." I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "You steal our money, file for divorce, and now you want me to help you avoid prison? Your arrogance truly knows no bounds." "Think about it, Elise," he urged. "You get all your money back immediately. Not tied up in court for years. Not subject to government seizure. Clean, untraceable funds in your name only." The offer was tempting. I couldn't deny it. Financial security, right now, without the prolonged battle ahead. But at what cost? "How much are we talking about?" I asked, testing his desperation. 500,000, he said without hesitation. More than what was in our joint account. Enough to restart your life completely. And what exactly would I have to do? Carter leaned closer. "Just tell the FBI you can't remember any suspicious activities. That I always kept business and personal matters separate. That you had no reason to suspect anything unusual. Perjury, in other words." He shrugged slightly. "Only if they ask you directly, which they probably won't if you're convincingly oblivious." I considered him for a long moment. This man whom I'd loved and trusted for 14 years was now casually asking me to commit a federal crime to save him from his own misdeeds. "I have a counteroffer," I said finally. Carter's expression brightened with hope. "I'm listening. Return all the money you stole. From me, from Reynolds Technologies, from wherever else. Turn yourself in. Confess everything. And I'll tell the FBI exactly what I already have, that I knew nothing about your criminal activities." His face hardened. "That's not a counteroffer. That's a death sentence." "No, Carter. That's accountability." "You don't understand what's at stake," he said, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "These people I've been dealing with, they're dangerous. If I turn myself in, If I implicate them, then that's a problem of your own making, I replied, standing to leave. You chose these people. You chose these actions. You chose to betray everything and everyone. He grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly tight. Elise, please. I'm begging you. I looked down at his hand, then into his eyes. Let go of me, Carter. Now. Something in my tone must have registered because he released me immediately. What are you going to do? He asked, a note of defeat creeping into his voice. I'm going to rebuild my life, I said simply. Without you, without your money, without your lies, and you're going to face the consequences of your choices. As I walked away, I heard him call after me, but I didn't turn back. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted between the buildings, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. I took a deep breath of city air, feeling oddly unburdened despite the uncertainty ahead. My phone buzzed with a text from Margot. How did it go? I typed back. He offered me $500K to help him avoid FBI charges. I declined. Her response came immediately. Smart. That conversation would be evidence of witness tampering. Of course. Even in his desperation, Carter had been trying to manipulate me one last time. It was almost impressive how consistently he underestimated me. Another text came through, this time from Victoria. Office keys ready for Monday. Westbrook's confirmed 10 a.m. meeting. Ready to reclaim your career? I smiled, typing back. More than ready. That night, I returned to the penthouse, half expecting to find Carter waiting. Instead, the apartment was eerily silent, exactly as I had left it that morning. I wandered through the rooms, seeing everything with new eyes. The expensive art Carter had insisted we buy. The designer furniture chosen more for status than comfort. The framed photos of us looking like the perfect couple. It had all been a carefully constructed facade, as hollow as our marriage had apparently been. In the master bedroom, I opened my closet and began methodically packing essentials. I wasn't sure where I would go yet, but I knew I couldn't stay here, surrounded by the artifacts of Carter's deception. Perhaps a hotel for a few days until I could find a suitable apartment. As I folded clothes into a suitcase, my phone rang. An unknown number. Mrs. Merrick? A woman's voice asked when I answered, Yes, this is Agent Harlow. I apologize for calling after hours, but we've had a development in the case. Your husband has just been taken into custody. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. What happened? He attempted to board a private jet to Singapore 30 minutes ago. Airport security detained him based on our alert. We found nearly $1 million in cash in his luggage, along with multiple passports. Multiple passports. The man I'd married, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, had been living a completely separate life. What happens now? I asked. He'll be formally charged tomorrow. Given the flight risk he presents, I expect he'll be held without bail. She paused. Mrs. Merrick, we'd like you to come in tomorrow morning to make a formal statement. Your attorney is welcome to accompany you. Of course, I agreed. I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat motionless on the bed, trying to process this latest development. Carter arrested. Trying to flee the country, multiple passports, cash. It was like something from a spy thriller, not my actual life. My phone rang again. Margot this time. I just heard, she said without preamble. Are you all right? I think so, I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. It's shocking, but also clarifying in a way. Agent Harlow called me too. We'll meet at the FBI field office tomorrow at 9 a.m. She paused. Elise, this changes things for the divorce proceedings. With Carter facing federal charges, the court will likely freeze all assets pending criminal resolution. So, I could be left with nothing for years, I said, the reality sinking in. Possibly. But I'm already working on alternatives. Carter's attempt to flee the country gives us grounds to request emergency relief. Judge Harriman has a reputation for protecting innocent spouses in cases like this. After we hung up, I continued packing, moving methodically through the apartment, collecting only what I truly needed or valued. The designer clothes, the luxury items Carter had insisted on, none of it seemed important now. In his home office, I paused before the locked filing cabinets that had stymied me before. On impulse, I tried the handle of the credenza behind his desk. Surprisingly, it opened easily. Inside were stacks of file folders, neatly labeled in Carter's precise handwriting. I began scanning them quickly, looking for anything relevant to our finances. Most contained routine business documents, but one labeled Personal Offshore caught my attention. Inside were detailed records of accounts I'd never known existed, in the Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore. Account numbers, access codes, even online banking credentials. Carter's meticulous record-keeping, once a quality I'd admired, had become evidence of his duplicity, and potentially, my financial salvation. I photographed every page with my phone, then carefully replaced the file exactly as I'd found it. This information would be crucial for Margot and the forensic accountant to trace the missing funds. As I closed the credenza, a framed photo on Carter's desk caught my eye. Us on our wedding day, both laughing as we fed each other cake. We looked so happy, so genuinely in love. Had it all been a performance even then? Or had something in him changed along the way, ambition and greed gradually corrupting whatever genuine feelings he'd once had? I would probably never know the truth. The Carter I thought I knew had never really existed, or if he had, he was long gone, replaced by the calculating criminal who had nearly destroyed me. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Check your email. Sent you Westbrook project files to review before Monday. Welcome back to the real world, I smiled, tucking the phone into my pocket. Carter had tried to leave me with nothing. No money, no career, no dignity. Instead, he had inadvertently given me back myself. Tomorrow would bring FBI interviews, court hearings, and the messy public exposure of Carter's crimes. But it would also bring my first day back at work, my re-entry into the profession I loved, my reclamation of the woman I was always meant to be. The money would sort itself out eventually, one way or another. I had Margot's legal brilliance, Victoria's professional support, and my own newly rediscovered strength. For now, that was enough. I zipped the last suitcase closed, took one final look around the apartment that had never really been a home, and walked out the door without looking back. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out! And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.